Hello, how's it going everyone? So in this video, we're going to be talking about the importance of bid strategies, which one should you choose, why some bid strategies are not the right choice, and this is going to be more so geared towards Google. However, the same idea applies on Meta, just in a little bit of a different implementation. So anyways, I'm going to jump in and kind of show you guys the two different types that I use in about 99% of my accounts and the reason as to why I pick one versus the other. So if we go into the settings, this is on my demo account, and I go in here and I select maximize conversions, it will give me an option to set a target cost per action, so a target CPA. This essentially is adding a second layer of restriction to the bid strategy in order to essentially say, hey, I don't want to pay, more than, let's say, $100 for this action to take place, whether that's a lead, whether that's a form fill, whether that's a, import, whether that's a purchase, it doesn't matter. It's all based around the fact that you're setting this target CPA, and so it's more restrictive on trying to meet that goal. Another one is obviously maximize conversion value, setting a ROAS of, let's just say, 200%. That is restrictive. Now, some can argue that if, for example, leave it on conversion based, if I set my ROAS goal to 10%, that's not that restrictive because in most scenarios, it should be able to reach around a 10% ROAS. And so you're not really going to run into too much restrictions on this setup, even though you are targeting another layer on top of this. And so what do I mean by this, right? So let me go to my other tab over here. So my awesome, amazing graphic. So restricted bidding and ROAS, which is ROAS and TCPA bidding, open bidding, which is like maximize conversions or maximize conversion value. So one, you're just saying, hey, I want to reach this goal at this certain cost. The other one is, hey, I just want to reach this goal and reach it as much as possible. Now, what tends to happen is that you see results go crazy on open bidding, right? So anything open bidding, you see results, high spend, don't see good results come in, you get nervous, and you're like, why can't we reach goal? I want to hit goal faster. So then you move to restricted bidding, and then you run into a scenario where maybe you get like 1 conversions, 2 conversions, or you get like a handful of conversions, and then you might start to see that atrophy. Now, typically what this means, and typically what I see inside of ROAS and TCPA bidding, is it's over prioritizing the warm audience, right? So from, this is an amazing graphic here. So when it comes to restricted bidding, you're limiting the algorithm's ability to go out and find more new users at a better cost or even a worse cost. It doesn't know. It's going to try to find those people. And so when you restrict it and you say, I only want to reach the goal that I've set, it will say, okay, I can't go out and find people, so I'm just going to go after the audience I know is going to convert, which is typically a warm audience. And this warm audience is influenced by all the other channels, all the other networks, whatever you're doing across the board. This will lean more into scooping up people from an already warmed up audience, which can be useful if you want to have this be more of a secondary click and pushing more towards your marketing, maybe more of a middle of funnel or bottom of funnel. It does make sense. However, if you are trying to scale this, either it'll over prioritize warm traffic and you'll scale it, but it'll hit a wall and you won't know why it's hitting that wall, and it just starts to capture more warm traffic, and so then it over prioritizes the warm traffic as its target and says, this is my audience. So then you can no longer scale the campaign. It's impossible because it doesn't have any new audiences being fed into it. And so when that happens, you're heavily reliant on whatever other channels feeding it, whether it's Meta or connected TV, TikTok, any of those other channels that tend to feed Google. And if you're in a scenario where you're only running Google, let's say, you might find that you're hitting a spend wall, like your spend potential, that wall to scale is being met a lot faster than if you were at, for example, open bidding. Sometimes people like to do this and have terrible margins, but I heavily lean against this, and we teach this in the school community that I literally don't run this like at all unless I'm doing retargeting. I mainly run open bidding, which is going to give you a lot more scale potential, and it's going to allow the cold audience to get more to prospect and find new people a lot easier. And so what tends to happen is people will say, oh, I need a 5x ROAS, And so you get a 5x ROAS, but you don't see that translate to the business on the back end, right? You don't see that your overall profit is getting better. You see it getting worse. Whereas we find in 99% of scenarios, when you run open bidding, maximize conversions or maximize conversion value, you want to limit the spend, or you want to limit the bidding based off of the spend, right? So if, for example, I'll say budget on this one. So we'll do budget. If I notice that I'm getting to, let me actually do a different color here for you guys. So if I notice that this is my current budget and this is how much I can spend, right? So this is like the market, let's just say, total spend. I might find that I'm getting a lot of new users throughout this whole process. But as I'm getting more new users, the efficiency starts to drop off when I am at this point of spend. And so if I spend past this, I then get into the realm of unknown. We're prospecting really hard. We might be finding more cold audiences, but we're not necessarily profitable yet. This could either be an indication of what I just mentioned, that you just got to give it time. And so you're looking at overall windows of, when someone first clicks, how long does it take for them to convert? And so you want to give it some time for those people to get warmed up and know more about your brand and then convert. Or you're in a scenario where the audience has essentially just become more inefficient due to the fact that it's been competitive, higher CPCs, whatever the case is. And so that's when we go and deploy the feeder strategy, which is a little bit different, which is in our school community that we teach, and that allows you to kind of work past this. But I like to limit the efficiency based off of budget. So if we are, saying, okay, I'm at, efficiency, let's push a little bit more, I have the opportunity to do that just because my spend potential is a lot higher on an open bidding versus a restrictive bidding setting. If I wanted to over here, and this is what I see in a lot of accounts, you're pushing on restrictive bidding, you're saying, okay, here's my spend potential, meaning the audience I can capture. I want to scale this to the moon at a 5x ROAS, but I just can't because there's no audience for me to capture that the algorithm's going to find. But if you're using open, you have the ability to prospect from this cold audience, and so when given enough time, it will then say, okay, I found a new audience pool. Now my spend potential, or my budget in the spend potential, goes up, and I can now capture a larger audience, and I know it's cold, or I have more emphasis on it being cold because I'm prospecting more. And so what we tend to see is sort of like this stair step of efficiency that happens where you increase budget, and I'll actually draw this out real quick. So you're here, okay, so we'll do something like that. So you're at a point over here where you're, hitting your efficiency, right? You are at that cutoff. And so you're like, okay, let's scale past this, right? Let's scale into the unknown efficiency, and let's do maybe like a 10% increase, 20% increase, whatever the case is, right? And so when you do that, you're climbing the stair, right? You're going up and you're essentially dropping your efficiency in order to capture more people and to prospect that cold audience. And then once you hit that goal again, you might find, okay, sweet, now we are efficient. Now I'm at a point in time where I'm efficient because we found another audience and we're capturing them and getting them to convert. Let's now go to the same process again, right? Let's say, okay, let's scale 10, 20% more. You scale 10, 20% more, you wait for that buying window to fill, meaning that someone that clicks new is going to take some time to convert. And then you're waiting, and then after you've gone, you go up again and you scale again. So this process in here is sort of the plateau. We were like, okay, we're hitting our efficiency wall again because we didn't increase budget. And so then you just keep repeating that process again and again and again and again. And that allows you to scale the overall account because you're giving it the ability to prospect that cold audience over here, right? So in that period of time, we're looking at, cold audience being prospected on each stair step process right here, right? So if I were to do it, I know this is not the best graphic ever, but it's like, okay, prospecting cold, sweet, we're capturing the cold, spend increases, prospecting cold again, now we're capturing all the cold, now we're efficient, scale again, efficient, scale again, efficient. And you typically can do that pretty consistently. The only issue that we run into whenever we hit that range is that you might find that CPCs get crazy, like I was talking about a moment ago, and we add in the feeder strategy to help get to a point in time where you're able to capture more clicks and not have it be as big of an issue from a CPC perspective. So keep that in mind, that whenever you have accounts, I never run TROAS or TCPA bidding on cold, just because I know that it's not going to allow me to prospect. The only thing I will do with TROAS with standard shopping is I'll put it extremely low, so it'll be like 40%, and that will essentially act like an open way to bid if I can. Now, if I had the option inside of standard shopping to go maximize conversions, I would do that, but I don't. So we manipulate it and we drop the TROAS to only 40% or 30%, super low. So it allows us to have this scale potential over here. And like I said, this stair step method has worked really well. It gets enhanced even more whenever you go into first click CAPI imports. And another important factor that is always the first thing to do, make sure that whenever you're looking at this, you're tracking your top line metrics. You're not just looking at in-platform ROAS. So we might find that, and I'll super quick, on this, if I have, let's say, the client wants to do like a 200%, ROAS, right? That's what they think they need. We look at the back end of the business and we say, okay, at 200% TROAS, we're actually harming your business because we're not getting new customers because we're over prioritizing the warm restricted bidding. And so that's not allowing us to scale. And so what we then say is, let's see what happens when we just pause this campaign. We pause it and then we notice, hey, wait a minute, that didn't affect our top line as much as we thought it would. That didn't affect the overall cost per new customer. That didn't affect the overall media efficiency ratio, which is like your global ROAS. Okay, let's try an open bidding. Let's try prospecting and finding new people. You make a super low budget on your total spend potential, so you don't bleed too much in the spend, and you can start really low and do the same exact method here on stair stepping. You might find that when you're at this point in time on budget, you might be hitting, like, let's say a 50% ROAS target, but you look at the back end of the business and you notice that, wait a minute, it's actually we're profitable still. So then you do a little test scale and like, okay, well, let me scale this up again, and then you notice, okay, we're still at a 50% TROAS here again, and the business is now getting more new customers. Okay, my benchmark is now a 50% TROAS. If I see that TROAS go way up, or if I see that ROAS go way up, where I'm, instead of it being 50%, it jumps to 200%, 300%, 400%, I immediately get extremely concerned because now I'm worried about it going into warm traffic, because it's very rare that you have something that just jumps from 50% to like quadruple the overall efficiency overnight. That doesn't just happen. There's got to be a third party in play, whether it's warm traffic, which tends to be the case where you're looking at Meta or another platform that's pushing people in, or it's an email campaign, a sales campaign, something that's causing this massive influx of demand to come in and convert. Is typically a warm traffic signal that's now being captured. And there's tons of tactics that we cover to get around this inside of the Skool community. This is sort of what I like to try to avoid and be on the lookout for. Because a lot of times people say, oh my God, we went from 50% TROAS to 400%, or 50% ROAS all the way up to 400% ROAS. Look how good we are. And I'm just in my mind thinking this is going to hurt the business because it's capturing brand traffic, repeat traffic, traffic's already warmed up, people that have already been in the site. And so you always have to look at the back end metrics, the top line metrics of what is actually important to the client, right? Like I said, again, cost to acquire a new customer and your global ROAS, right? All cash in, all cash out. What am I spending on Meta? What am I spending on Google? What changed and allows me to then do the stair step method? So always look for aggressive bidding. Control the aggressiveness based on the budget, not based on the bidding, because that'll trap you. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is extremely common that I see this issue pop up. So if you're already aware of this and you're doing this, you're ahead of, I would say, about 90% of the accounts that I've ever seen. So anyways, thanks again, and I will see you guys in the next video.